Morning. Morning all. Good morning to His Excellency Nigel O'Connor, President of Pleasantville. Morning to Marissa. Morning, Kurt Richards. Good morning, John Edwards. Morning, Teresa. Claire Irish, Candace Joseph. Morning, Alison Boyce. Good morning to you. Let's see what's going on here. Right, that's why I wasn't seeing that. Cheryl Mitchell, morning. Pauline Buckmeyer, good morning. Good morning, Anna. Felix Hospitalis, Twin Peters, morning. Point Kumana Sharon, good morning to you. J. Dimples, Pamela Moses, morning. Morning, guys. Gemma Alexander, Alison Boyce, morning. Ruth Fronton, morning. Yes, so I have to apologize for no live last week. Thursday, because issues with the internet, issues which I'm still experiencing. So, yeah, I had to go out and purchase a MiFi device yesterday from T-Mobile. Because Flow, I don't know what is the issue, what's going on with them, but apparently they're having challenges with the internet. And what I was told by them, San Fernando, Shogunas, Arima, Maloney, Aruka Maloney, some other areas. So, but the work has to be done. So if it means having to invest in a MiFi device, well then, so be it. Keelan Jackson, morning. Jennifer Dorset, good morning to you. Judy King, Don Joseph. Who do we have here on YouTube? Ruben Rogers, good morning. Dexter Thwaites, morning. Jogla, Miami. Rennie Lewis, Antoinette Birch, morning. Donna Walcott, good morning to you. Juliana Caesar, morning. I see you. Morning, Angie. Joycelyn Smallwhite, good morning to you. Angela Carty, morning. Henry Joseph, good morning. David Clark, Donna Walcott, Antoinette Birch, morning. Folks on Facebook, you're hearing me good, right? Just want to make sure. Morning, Carol. Nice, loud and clear, excellent. I started a little early, so a couple of minutes. So we give some of the other folks who normally come on. Rudy Nicholas says, yes, Alison Rogers, thank you so much. Right, so I initially intended to speak about Mulilal today, but I need to push him back for a later date to discuss, touch on some other developments over the last few days that, may be considered, well, topical issues. And I haven't had an opportunity to touch on those. Also, I won't be able to do the live on Thursday because I'm traveling to Barbados and Jamaica for work-related conferences. So I will be out until the 19th. But if the opportunity permits, while I'm outside, because I'll have my laptop and stuff with me, so if the opportunity permits, I'll be able to do the live. I mean, I'll be able to take the calls because I can't travel with the equipment, but certainly I'll try and see if it is that my schedule permits or allows me to do the lives while I'm outside. Yeah. So Wayne Mahon is listening from Canada. Good morning, Wayne. Norris Jelks, Karen Fields Puna, good morning. We say good morning to Mr. Chance as well. Mr. Chance made sure called last night to find out if we having a live this morning. Right, so let me start with issue number 1. Again, so many things happened last week, right? And continue to happen. But I want to touch first on this issue with this Brent Thomas matter, which the opposition seems hell-bent on prostituting. for their own political gain. Not that it's really working, because information continues to come to hand. It just debunks the positions and claims that they have made. But I see the Dogalaya, he seems to be leading the charge with respect to prostituting this whole Brent Thomas matter, this arms dealer who was extradited, if you want to call it that, um, under less than normal circumstances from Barbados. And the opposition, while they are trying to make a case to give the public the perception that their interest in this is about protecting the rights of citizens, it's not about that. When you listen to Kamala and you listen to Anil Roberts and David Nakid, all they seem to be trying to do is to see how could we pin this on the Prime Minister as the head of the National Security Council and on the Minister of National Security. Otherwise, for them, there is no political mileage to be gained, and they couldn't care less about Brent Thomas. Right? But that is what they're trying to do. How best we could link it to the Prime Minister. So, notwithstanding the fact that the Prime Minister called a press conference, stating the position of the government on the matter, they might want to hear that. No, it's all about, let me see how we could tie Rowley into this. It's the only thing I haven't heard them say yet is that this is the most scandalous thing to hit Trinidad and Tobago in our history. No, that's what they said last year about the Nelson Gate, right? So, but let's face it, the UNC's issue is that after 8 years in government, there has not been any major scandal to that could stain the government as took place between 2010 to 2015, where seemingly every Monday morning you had a government minister's name getting called up in some kind of bacchanal, resulting in Kamala Persad-Bissessar as prime minister having to fire the most number of ministers in this country's history. So while she loves to beat her chest and talk about, she was the first female leader from to lead the Commonwealth, all kind of thing, while she was prime minister, she has to take that is a record that she doesn't really talk about much. But of all the prime ministers in this country's history, Kamala Persad-Bissessar holds the title of firing the most number of ministers, which is an indictment on what is the term I want to use, boy? In terms of her being able to, it's not just on her ability, but it is the caliber, quality of people that she has available to her from that party to select to serve as ministers or any other position for that matter. And this is one of the things that we need to be concerned about, that if in 2025 they should return either on their own or through some amalgamation of parties as we saw in 2010, that who are the people that she could really rely on or select, the pool of persons that she could select from to serve as ministers. People that you could trust, people of integrity, and persons that we can have confidence in. The current lot that she has there, the likes of Rudal Munilal, Saddam Hussein, Jayanti Lakshmi Dayal, Anil Roberts, who would most certainly be a minister, David Nakid, David Lee, who currently has matters before the court and is out on bail. This is the cesspool that she's going to have to choose from. You all understand the challenge that we face as a country if these people were to get back in 2025. But anyway, I digress. I wanted to read a media release that Mrs. Persad-Bissessar put out on the 4th of May, entitled, it says, the statement by Keith Rowley in today's post-cabinet media briefing that he has nothing to answer for concerning the alarming illegal abduction of TNT national Brent Thomas from Barbados is unbelievable. The statement by Keith Rowley in today's post-cabinet media briefing that he has nothing to answer for concerning the alarming illegal abduction of TNT national Brent Thomas from Barbados is unbelievable. Rowley wants citizens to believe that the members of the National Security Council, he and Fitzgerald Hines, had no idea how police officers ASP Birch, Senior Superintendent Suzette Martin, and Corporal Joe Field were able to commandeer a CARICOM aircraft to forcibly and illegally detain and abduct Brent Thomas from Barbados. Right? Now, again, and this is the point I made earlier, hear what she says. Rowley wants citizens to believe that as members of the National Security Council, he and Fitzgerald Hines had no idea how police officers, and she names police officers. The National Security Council, as Kamala Persad-Bissessar is supposed to know, as the former Prime Minister and former head of the National Security Council, doesn't only constitute the Prime Minister and the Minister of National Security. You have a number of other ministers who serve on that council, such as the Attorney General, the Minister of Finance, the Minister of Public Utilities, the Minister of of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs, and I think a couple others. When she was Prime Minister and Chairman of the National Security Council, she had the likes of Rudal Munilal, Minister of Housing, sitting on that. But conveniently, she just mentions Dr. Rowley and Fitzgerald Hines. So as I said at the start, they couldn't give two hoots about Brent Thomas and how he look up and all that kind of thing. It's how can we use this to pin it on Rowley and Hines to support the claim that we always make that Trinidad and Tobago is becoming a dictatorship, and that this is what Rowley and them doing to trample on the rights of citizens, right? So they just locking up people just so. Sounds familiar. We're coming back to that. Now here's the kicker for me. The one-liner. I'm going to borrow a term from Farley, because we're dealing with Farley today too. Yes, Farley and Trevor, we're dealing with them today. The one-liner that he beaten is just about, well, the Prime Minister could fight up and beat up and cuss out with himself, but I just delivered that one-liner, and that was the knockout punch. And Rowley carry cover from that. Here's what she says. It is my information that. It is my information. This is the leader of the opposition, former Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, and former head of the National Security Council, saying, it is my information that, not that it is my knowledge, it is my information that if any police officer has to travel abroad for any duty, approval is required from the Minister of National Security. 2, that it is my information that the Commissioner of Police does not have the authority to deploy officers to function in any operation outside of the jurisdiction of Trinidad and Tobago without government knowledge by the Minister of National Security. 3, and I keep repeating, it is my information. With respect to the use of a CARICOM aircraft, no Commissioner of Police would have unfettered access to use said aircraft at his or her pleasure without the Minister's approval. Therefore, the question must be asked, why hasn't disciplinary action been taken against these officers for this illegal abduction? It is unbelievable that Rowley's sudden and highly suspicious trip to Barbados is a personal vacation that was planned in advance and not related to this expanding abduction scandal engulfing both governments. It is clear that the independence of the TTPS, as well as our entire national security apparatus, has been compromised under the gangsterism of this dictatorial Rowley regime. See where they're going, right? All citizens need to be extremely concerned by this dangerous episode. This dictatorial PNM regime has undermined the rule of law to abduct and persecute Brent Thomas. If they get away with it, they will believe that they could do the same to anyone and everyone. Rowley is taking citizens for fools over the illegal abduction of Brent Thomas and is now behaving like a full-blown, out-of-control dictator. Okay, so the fact that you've been calling him a dictator for the past 8 years is now, he was just mild, now he just full-blown. Okay. Now, as former Prime Minister and former head of the National Security Council, Kamla Persad-Bissessar, it is unbelievable that she would make a statement, it is my information. What does that mean? It is my information. It means I am not speaking here from an empirical standpoint. It means that somebody tell me, right? I asked somebody to give me this information and they went and do some research and they come back and they told me this. This is not me, Kamla Persad-Bissessar, former Prime Minister. This is not me, Kamla Persad-Bissessar, former Chairman of the National Security Council, telling you that I know this for a fact because as the former Chairman of the National Security Council, I am aware that this is what obtains, that I am fully au courant with how the National Security Council works and what are the powers of the Minister of National Security, what are the powers of the Prime Minister as the Chairman of the National Security Council. No, that is not what she's saying now. She's saying it is my information. So I got some information. Somebody did some research or I did some research, but I'm not speaking here from an empirical standpoint. We should be concerned about that for 5 years, 3 months, and 14 days, Kamla Persad-Bissessar was the head of the National Security Council and is basically telling us now she has no clue what is the remit of the head of the National Security Council. She has no clue what is the role, responsibilities, and function of the Minister of National Security vis-a-vis the role that he plays on the National Security Council. That she had to get somebody to go and do some research for her. so that this is her information. But she take it in front. So I put, this is my information. So if it turns out that the information is wrong, and that I am proven wrong, subsequent, that if Rowley or whoever come out and say, well, no, this is what obtains, I could easily say, well, no, well, that is what I was told. So this is not me speaking here as my former, in a role as former head of the National Security Council. This is me speaking based on information I was given. So don't blame me. Blame the person who gave me the wrong information. 5 years, 3 months, and 14 days as Prime Minister, as head of the National Security Council. And she can't tell you what her role was. We should be concerned. So what was she doing in these meetings? If she attended the meetings at all? Because we know that there were other committees which she chaired as Prime Minister, and based on what we've been told, based on the attendance record, a lot of times she would have missed many of these meetings. So maybe that is the same situation here, that as head of the National Security Council, she probably missed meetings on her 5-day weekend, and so therefore it was somebody else chairing it. So she can't tell you what her responsibilities were, so that she cannot speak from an empirical standpoint. But she wants to be the minister, the Prime Minister again, and head of the National Security Council. Well, interestingly, there was an article published in today's Newsday, which brings a little more perspective to this matter, right? And supports what the Prime Minister has been saying, that the cabinet had no role in this matter. He, as Prime Minister and Chairman of the National Security Council, had no role in this matter, and neither did the Minister of National Security. And we will see why. Let me get this here, right? For those of us who may not have had occasion yet to read that article. Where is it? So, today's Newsday. Elite unit linked to abduction of arms dealer in Barbados. This is a headline story in the Newsday published 11 hours ago. An elite unit under the Ministry of National Security, the Transnational Organized Crime Unit, which works closely with the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration, the DEA, and other international and regional security agencies, has been identified as a unit which purportedly arranged the capture and return of arms dealer Brent Thomas from Barbados in October last year. So since October last year, this happened, right? Okay. A national security source said that the TOCU has assisted the police on at least 5 occasions in the past to arrange the capture and return of TNT nationals accused of financial crimes in other Caribbean islands under a CARICOM treaty. Let me read that again. A national security source says that the TOCU has assisted the police on at least 5 occasions, at least 5. So this whole situation with Brent Thomas, this is not the first time that this has happened. It has happened at least 5 times before. But the opposition, they focused on that. They only consider this one now because this one is live, right? And the judge made a statement, and the judge put out whatever his judgment is, and it was critical and condemnatory of the government and other officials. So yes, let's see what we could do. They love to file freedom of information requests, especially Giant T. We know, based on her utterances over the last few days, she knows how to file freedom of information request to get information on Foster Cummins and his business, his financial business, right? I wonder if she's going to file a freedom of information request to get details about the at least other 5 occasions on which this elite unit would have assisted in the capture and return of TNT nationals to Trinidad and Tobago. Whether or not any of those at least 5 or more took place while Kamala Persad-Bissessar was the Prime Minister and Chairman of the National Security Council. And if any of those captures did in fact take place between 2010 and 2015, based on this media release that she put out, she must now put out another one and tell us, well, since you say Rowley is supposed to know and Hines supposed to know, you need to tell us if any of these that is reported here took place between 2010 and 2015. Did you know? And which one of your 5 national security ministers who would have been serving at the time that it happened, whether they knew and the other members of your National Security Council knew as well? Because you can't tell me, Rowley's supposed to know, Hines supposed to know, but when it happened under me, no, I didn't know. And my Minister of National Security didn't know. Because the rules changed between then and now, right? So Rowley's supposed to know, Hines supposed to know. But if it happened under you, no, I didn't know. No, my National Security Minister didn't know. No, the National Security Council wasn't aware. but Rowley's supposed to know. I continue. But police have since been advised by lawyers for the state that the treaty is not enforceable because there is no legislation giving it effect in this country. Okay. Police supposed to know that, right? So they operating based on a treaty. So as they know, police officers are not legislators. All right? They operating based on, they know that there's a treaty in place that allows us to do X, Y, and Z, and we're operating under that. Now, you have attorneys coming to say, after at least 5 other nationals have been returned under this very treaty, we don't know over what span of years, lawyers are now coming to say that the treaty is not effective in law because, let me get it here, right? Because there is no legislation giving it effect. So after how many years, all you now realize that? Okay. The source said in Thomas's case, the TOCU reportedly organized the aircraft to make things easy. TOCU has been described as a unit operating out of the Ministry of National Security, which deliberately keeps a low-level profile, but is credited with making serious interventions in securing this country's borders. The Prime Minister said at a post-cabinet press conference on May 4th, that the procedure used by the police in Thomas's case had been used on at least 6 previous occasions. If there were issues with it, they would be explored on at least 6 previous occasions. You ain't not interested in the other 6. Why is that? Well, you're only interested now, right? It goes on to talk about Thomas, 61, is the owner of Specialist Shooters Training Center, who has been one of the main suppliers of guns, ammunition, and other security equipment to various arms of the state for over 20 years, was snatched from his hotel room in Barbados by officers from the Royal Barbados Police Force. So it wasn't Trinidad Police that took him, it was the Royal Barbados Police Force, right? The officers had been provided with copies of 6 arrest warrants for Thomas on charge of being in possession of grenades, automatic rifles. Thomas was on his way to visit his US cardiologist, stopped over in Barbados, when he was detained, handcuffed, and handed over to 3 officers assigned to Trinidad and Tobago's Professional Standard Bureau on the tarmac of the Grantley Adams International Airport. He believed a TT Defense aircraft was used by the police. Energy Minister Stuart Young was the one who disclosed in Parliament on April 20th that an aircraft belonging to the Regional Security System based in Barbados had been used. TNT is not a member of the RSS, which was created out of a need for collective response to security threats affecting the stability of the region in 1982. Police claim Thomas volunteered to return, but legal sources close to him question if that was so. Why did he have on handcuffs during the flight? Police said they took steps to get Thomas in custody in Barbados after they received intelligence that he intended to travel to Greece. But High Court Judge Justice Devendra Rampersad from the officers deliberately did not disclose the steps taken to bring Thomas back to Trinidad and Tobago in his ruling on April 25th in the lawsuit Thomas filed against the AG, the DPP, over a breach of his constitutional rights. The incident has triggered a multiplicity of investigations in both Barbados and Trinidad and Tobago. At the Barbadian government level, its Attorney General Dale Marshall has called on Police Commissioner Richard Boyce for an urgent report. And Dr. Rowley has called on National Security Minister Fitzgerald Hines to get details from the Police Commissioner Ula Herwood Christopher on the matter. And both the Police Complaints Authority and the Commissioner of Police are investigating allegations of misconduct against the PSP officers. And the article goes on a little bit, some quotes from Gary Griffith and others. Let me see what else we have here. Right, a senior officer said it was never the intention to target Thomas first in the firearms probe, but because an investigation had already commenced regarding the sale of a pistol, a decision was made to audit his business at the same time. According to police, in early August of 2022, Thomas's business came up on their radar after a man was held with a gun during a roadblock which he purchased from SSTC, which is Thomas's company. But his firearm license did not match the record at the police firearm. So in other words, the implication here is that Mr. Thomas would have sold a gun to an individual bearing a firearm user's license. But it appears that his firearm user's license was a fraud because the information on that license did not match what the police service has based on the FUL that they issued, right? And it was that caused them to cast their eyes on Mr. Thomas to see if it is Mr. Thomas is in the habit of selling firearms without verifying the FUL and so on. And you see, this is the point that I made a couple of days ago. With respect to this position taken by Kamala Persad-Bissessar, that the answer to the country's crime situation is to give everybody gun. So that if she becomes prime minister in 2025, any laws, according to her, that the PNM put in place to make it more difficult for citizens to get guns, her administration is going to remove all such laws. And once you are a decent, law-abiding citizen and you want a gun, you could get a gun. Okay? And I made the point. Since nobody right now, perhaps the only reason why we don't see a proliferation of persons holding firearms based on fraudulent FULs is because it is not so available now for persons to have access to see what it looked like and to copy it. But when every Tom, Dick, Harry, Jenny, and Jane getting gun under Mrs. Persad-Bissessar, well, it's easy. Let me see what it look like now. Send my photocopy of that now. And before you know it, there are people lining up now with fraudulent FULs, going by gun dealers to get gun. As clearly it appears was the case in this situation. Right. Police later searched Thomas's home at Highland Park, Maraval, and his business at Aranguez, where they seized several automatic guns and grenades, which are prohibited under the Firearms Act. Let me repeat that. Police later searched Thomas's home at Highland Park, Maraval, and his business at Aranguez, where they seized several automatic guns and grenades, which are prohibited under the Firearms Act. So how did it come in the country? How did it come into the country? Through the porous borders that they keep talking about? Or through legal ports of entry? And the folks down at the port, Customs and Excise, did they do their due diligence to see if it is that in these items that Mr. Thomas brought into the country that the article is telling us is prohibited under the Firearms Act? Did they check it to see that everything inside there is above board? But when you come through the airport in Piaco and they find your suitcase looking a little big, they want to put it up on the scanner, send it through, and then they want to send you to the red line and open it up and take out everything and put it on the counter, and they find nothing, and then they make you pack it back after you take your time. How long, wherever you're originating from, to pack your bag. When you reach there and they find one person, you have two big suitcases here, let me see what's inside it. They want to check it thoroughly. Going through, sometimes your dirty linen, everything you have to take out. They want to inspect and then give you to pack it back. But Mr. Thomas was allowed to bring in contraband, items that are prohibited under the Firearms Act. And it came through, we assume, legal ports of entry. But he goes on to say, though Thomas claimed that the grenades were imported to be sold to law enforcement, and he had firearm permits signed off by the Commissioner of Police for his guns. Which Commissioner of Police? So he is saying, he's making the claim here, that he had firearm permits signed off by then Commissioner of Police, Mr. Griffith, to bring in guns into the country that are prohibited under the Firearms Act. So the same robust system that Mr. Griffith told us about, same robust system that he says would ensure that only approved guns and the persons who receive these guns, everything is above board. We are now being told here that under that same robust system, Mr. Thomas would have received permits for guns that are prohibited under the Firearm Users Act. That he brought in grenades. He says that it was to be sold to law enforcement. When you ever hear the police in Trinidad using grenade? The last time I heard about the use of a grenade was when they had the prison break. Remember in 2015? In July or so, when they had the prison break in Port of Spain there, and a grenade was used. I don't think it went off. But I have never heard, maybe I missed it, the police at any exercise using grenades. But the gentleman is saying that he brought in the grenades to sell to law enforcement. Which law enforcement? I don't know. Close to midnight Friday, lawyers representing the AG lodged 24 grounds seeking to challenge the ruling of Justice Ram Persad. On the issue of Thomas's arrest in Barbados, the state intends to argue the judge was wrong to consider the actions of the Barbadian police, even if it was done at the request of local police, breached Thomas's constitutional right under Trinidad and Tobago laws. Now, the UNC is telling you that this was done entirely on Trinidad's side of the pond. There was no involvement with authorities in Barbados, high level or otherwise. So they would have you believe that the PSB in Trinidad Now these 3 officers, they just decided, let me go now, call, we just get the plane and jump across. And they reach in Barbados, walk in a police station and say, yeah, we have some warrant here to lock up a man in a hotel. They go and deal with that for we now. The police in Barbados have no knowledge beforehand. They have not, that's what they have to believe, right? There was no knowledge. So 3 officers, purported officers from Trinidad and Tobago, just and look what happened. Eh? Based on what the article is saying is that Mr. Thomas, it was the Bajan police that brought Mr. Thomas to the airport and met the Trinidad officers on the tarmac. So it says that the Trinidad officers, this implies they didn't even leave the airport. They had no hand in that. They just went and they collect the man, which implies that somehow this whole thing would have been pre-planned. Because I find it difficult to believe that the police in Trinidad and Tobago could just go to any Caribbean country and say, we come to lock up somebody. And the police say, no problem, in whatever country, yeah, let me go now. Now we can't go now, that's all they have to do it. Oh, okay, so the Bajan police taking orders from the Trinidad and Tobago police service, right? Mm-hmm. So the Prime Minister no, according to them, Minister of National Security no, according to them. And the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago and the Minister of National Security could just pick up the phone and just give orders and instructions to the Bajan police to seize a Trinidad and Tobago citizen. Apparently, that's how it is operate. That's how it is operate. The Prime Minister has that power. That we didn't know that he's the de facto Prime Minister of Barbados and probably several other Caribbean countries, to which we'll probably find out later on. Listening to the UNC. Yeah, that's how it went down. And that's what they have to believe. Try as they might to pin this on Dr. Rowley. Try as they might to pin this on Mr. Hines. And it's just, they're just looking for things. 8 years pass and they find, oh gosh, we have enough thing to talk about, boy. This thing with Nelson Gate, that didn't stick. We need something else. The Daryl Smith thing, that didn't stick. None of these things were as big as what happened 2010 to 2015, where Ram Logan was fired, Gary Griffith fired, Jack Warner fired, Colin Partap fired, Mary King fired, what's his name? The vet, can't remember his name. He too was fired. Several ministers was fired under Kamala Prasad-Biswas' regime. Minister after minister fired. Anil Roberts, well, he said he take in front, he resigned. But the habit was ask for their resignation. So rather than me having to fire you, but you're beating your chest that anytime a minister under you misbehaved, you fire them. So you admit that you were convinced that they misbehaved and you fired them. But no, every time somebody from the UNC get charged, is a PNM witch hunt and it's a PNM smear campaign. So all the ministers that you fired when you were prime minister between 2010 to 2015, that was PNM, right? Yeah, because remember, UNC ministers and UNC MPs, their hands are clean and their hearts are pure, just like their leader. They don't engage in no wrongdoing. From 25 years ago, it was a PNM smear campaign and designed to make the UNC look corrupt, right, with the Piaco airport. But yet still, she fired over 20-something ministers. In the belief, as she said, anytime one of her ministers went afoul of the law or did anything that is untoward, constitutes misbehavior in public office, she was only too happy to fire them. A point that Marsha Walker loves to make. That Kamala was only too happy to fire ministers who misbehaved. So you admit they misbehaved. That's why you fire them. But yet still you want to come now and tell us when they misbehave out of office, or as MPs, or local government practitioners, it's PNM smear campaign. All right. PNM real powerful, but to make you fire 20-something ministers, you were so convinced. Bunch of jokers. Bunch of jokers. But of course, the supporters running with this, right? Running with that. That Rowley know, and Hines know. And this is what they're doing. They're abducting citizens. And this is a clear-cut case that Rowley has now become a full-fledged dictator. But they could just run in our next country and lock up a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago. But I recall in 2011, when there was a certain state of emergency, a certain attorney general is on record as having made the statement, lock them up and we will find the evidence later. Lock them up and we will find the evidence later. So if you're walking on the road, you're driving down the road as a police officer and you find a man looking like he fit the description, throw him in the Maria, throw him in the back of the van and take him down the road. Take away his right to freedom, his constitutional right to freedom, And we will find the evidence later. Detain him for as long as we need to find the evidence. And it eventually came about that the majority of persons that they lock up, there was no evidence to be found. So these men were detained without charge, right? Without evidence. So you took away the freedom, the constitutionally guaranteed freedom of hundreds, thousands of men who fit the description. Yeah? Because we will find the evidence later. So that wasn't dictatorial. That wasn't full-blown dictatorship. So just because on this particular day you decide to walk down the road to buy a soft drink or two doubles, wearing a slipper, a short pants, and a white beater vest, you just come from work, you have on your white vest under your shirt or whatever it is, and you feel thirsty or hungry and you just want to run and get something, you take off the shirt, put on your short pants and your slippers. Hey, look, he fit the description. You see? What are you wearing there? There's a white beater vest you have on there, short pants, slippers, and he's of African descent, pick you up. We will find the evidence later. Throw him in the back of the van. Hey, let me go down the road. Oh, boy, Mr. Singh, Officer Singh. Mr. Singh, where's that one boy? Mr. Singh, you know me, boy. In the back, we don't hear nothing. I don't know. I know you, but I don't know you today. Jump in the back of the van. We're going down the road. Yeah? Frederick Street for you. Golden Grove for you. Santa Rosa for you. Come, jump in. Let me go up the road. That wasn't dictatorial, right? So one Trinidad and Tobago citizen, we are locked up in Barbados, right? And there is evidence to support that supported the granting of warrants, several warrants, at least 6 warrants here, to lock him up. And that based on how it was done, according to Kamla Prasad, predecessor, that is full-blown dictatorship. One man, but you lock up about what? How many thousands? No warrant, no evidence, no charge. That wasn't a dictatorship because under state of emergency, right? And we could use state of emergency powers to lock up who we want. That wasn't dictatorship, but their supporters will come and tell you, parrot that nonsense that she posted to talk about this is an example, and if we allow them to get away with this, we allowed you to get away with that. We allowed your Attorney General to get away with that. Well, at least at the time. But we allowed you to get away with it for 4 years, 3 months, and 14 days, or thereabouts. Yeah? Their supporters don't talk about that. They forget that. It seems like they purge their memories of everything negative between 2010 to 2015. Convenient. As soon as September 8th, 2015 came about, all the wrongdoing on the part of that party from government level come down. It was just wiped from memory. So all they know about is from 2015, when Keith Rowley was sworn in on the Wednesday, come forward. That is all they remember. That's all they know. 2020 vision when it comes to that. But everything that happened prior to that is glaucoma and cataract. Yeah, short-term memory. They can't remember anything. Yeah, memory loss. How convenient. But they're telling you put us back in office in 2025. So we could do it again, right? Remember? We have information that something is about to happen that is going to make the 1990 insurrection look like a tea party. And on that basis, they held a state of emergency for several months. Even first, when it started out by 9 o'clock, you had to be in your house, and then they brought it forward 7 o'clock, you had to be inside. So people scrambling when 6 o'clock, and you're only watching, looking at your watch, pressure, you're sweating, beads of perspiration. You don't want to get caught outside. Up to now, where is the information on that event that was supposed to make the insurrection look like a tea party? Anybody get locked up? A grenade belt? Or less, did you all seize a grenade, a gun? Anybody? You detain anybody for questioning? All them little boys all they lock up from Duke Street and Duncan Street and Nelson Street. How many of them were involved in this plot to make the coup look like a tea party? We're still waiting. Now, there's a difference between the PNM and the UNC. Because as soon as the UNC, had it been the other way around, as soon as the UNC came into office, they would have filed a Freedom of Information request to get information on this so-called plot to see whether or not it was true or just a ruse to hold a state of emergency to deal with crime because you had no other way to deal with the rising crime at the time. PNM are doing that. We ain't doing that. We ain't filing a Freedom of Information request to find out what are the details. Right? Okay. I just say, I still wonder whether or not there was any truth to that claim, but the only persons who could tell us that Prime Minister, the Minister of National Security, because they could request the information. All right. It is what it is. Moving right along. So I just thought I would mention that, right? That again, Mrs. Pasabi says always, I am advised. I am advised. Always advised. But never has empirical data to support anything that she said. She's always advised. Probably the most advised prime minister this country has ever had. Right. Issue number 2. I need to touch on, before I go there, let me leave that for last. I wanted to touch quickly on the issue of the Foster Cummings issue and venture credit union, right? I'm not going to go into too much detail today, but we touch on that at another, because I've heard all sorts of motives proffered from several quarters as to what is the real intention behind the story that was done by Mark Besant, that was published in last week's Sunday's Express, and then followed up by a 4-part series on TV6 News from last week Monday to last week Thursday. Monday night and Tuesday night, what was carried was essentially the verbatim narrative or narration of what it is was published in the newspaper over the weekend, right? So the real meat of the matter, if you want to call it that, was on Wednesday night and Thursday night. And I listened to it from, a professional standpoint. And there were certain things that said in that report that, to me, was cause for concern. Nothing from a corruption standpoint, as the UNC would try to mete out, based on that press conference that was held on was it Thursday or whenever, Wednesday or Thursday, with Jayanti Lakshmi and Wade Mark, which Jayanti spoke a whole set of, but anyway. To the issue of commingling, which to me is the biggest issue that is being made out there, where business funds was put into a private account, which really and truly by law is not supposed to happen, because what that does is that it makes it difficult to track business income for the purpose of paying taxes. So in essence, commingling is something that could be used for tax evasion, which is why once you have a business, a limited liability company, any income, any earnings from that business is supposed to pass through your business account, so that if BIR has to audit you, they would ask you for your bank statement so they could go through to see all the income that you received. If, however, they don't know if you have a personal account, they don't care about your personal account because or income that comes in there. Which is why, for instance, if it is that a person is owing Board of Inland Revenue back taxes, what BIR can do, particularly with businesses, is they could garnish your account so that any monies that comes into that business account, they could give instructions to the bank to freeze all that money and remit it to the Board of Inland Revenue. Now, Mr. Cummings, based on the interview, based on the responses that Mark Besant gave, indicated that with respect to his tax liabilities and tax obligations, all of that was met. And if that is so, notwithstanding that the funds would have gone into a personal account, well then, okay, I see no other issue there. But if that is not the case, well then he would ideally have a case to answer. And again, I'm speaking here from my professional background. Let me just see this thing here. Oh boy. Okay, good. Right. Yeah, so I just wanted to throw that in the mix. But as I said, people have said a lot of things about why was the whole thing. I've heard about claims of them, Mark Besant, having issues with Black excellence. I've heard about this being racially motivated. I don't necessarily subscribe to that. I see this for what it is, right? Because the question has to be asked, how did Mark Besant come into possession of all of this confidential information? Now, I have concerns that as a credit union, venture credit union, and a lot of the information, and based on quotes from Mark Besant of sources, is that somebody inside venture credit union is feeding some of this information either to Mark Besant or to somebody else who is feeding this information to Mr. Besant. But members of venture credit union should be concerned with respect to the issue of confidentiality of their personal business. That we have information in the public domain with respect to the personal account of Foster Cummings, information that could have only come from inside venture credit union. As far as I'm concerned, the only persons Venture Credit Union should be disclosing that information to is representatives of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service and possibly the Financial Intelligence Unit, the FIU, if they request. I don't see any reason that could be substantiated that somebody or somebody's in Venture Credit Union is providing confidential information either to Mr. Basant or to the UNC to pass to Mr. Basant. But it's not just there, it's also the police service. Because you'll recall that this would have started sometime last year when it was that there was a leak of the confidential memo from Special Branch indicating that they were conducting an investigation into Mr. Cummings. How did that Special Branch confidential, and it stated on it, confidential memo get into the hands of operatives in the UNC? How? Because if it's a select group of persons who would have had sight of this memo, how did that end up in the hands of the UNC? That is how this started, Jayanti Lakshmi Dayal. And subsequent to that, she then came and presented deposit slips, copies of checks, and all of these different things, again, which, as I said, is confidential information that resides within the Venture Credit Union. So a lot of this information that Mark Basant would have shared over the 4 days is stuff that some of which is stuff that we saw firsthand from Jayanti Lakshmi Dayal. And it has now ended up in the hands of Mark Basant. So we need to know who are the real sources, because you're only quoting according to sources, but nobody declaring who these sources are, right? And the media prides itself in that they don't need to disclose their sources. So if it is that Mr. Basant is getting this information from the UNC, right, then you're not going to disclose that, because obviously people will see it for what it is, as being political. And I believe that it is political. But if you notice, right, and this is what I think, and this is just me, my assessment of the whole situation, right, with respect to the persons that the UNC are targeting. First off, they went after Faris with respect to this whole Nelson Gate matter, right? And well, before that, they went after Faris with respect to the sale of his Porsche to Roger Kewal Singh, former police service commission member. That's how they started after Faris. And they went and dig up, and again, they got information with respect to Faris's personal declarations to the Integrity Commission with respect to the sale of the vehicle and all of that. How they get that information, I don't know. Because, and I too am concerned, because as someone who's subject to the Integrity in Public Life Act, and who has to submit a declaration to the Integrity Commission every year with respect to every dollar. If I have 25 cents in my pocket, I have to declare that too. They want to know all my business, all your business about all the bank accounts you have, how much loans you have, where you have the loan, when you take it out, what was the balance, your credit card, how much money you spent on your credit card last year, how much money you pay back, everything they need to know. It is very, very intrusive. And all of this information, again, but the UNC was able to get Faris business. So they started with the Porsche. You see that the Porsche and how he sell 2 cars and he didn't declare. But that didn't go anywhere. And then they got a lifeline with respect to the indemnity issue with Nelson Gate, and they went after that too to try and nail Faris to the cross. San Fernando West, marginal number 1 that they targeted in 2025. 2, Foster Cummins, La Joqueta Talparo, right? Marginal seat number 2 that they targeted in 2025. Number 3, you saw last week or week before, Saddam Hussein made claims that Minister of Health Terence Dayal saying that he buy land somewhere up in the east there that passes where the highway to Toko is supposed to pass, and that he bought the land with the intention of having to sell it back to the state for a ton of money to allow for the highway to pass, right? Saddam Hussein and Mr. Dayal Singh had to respond to that in the parliament. St. Joseph, right? Marginal seat number 3 that they targeted. The other 2 is Tunapuna and Sangre Grande. They have nothing yet on Esmond Ford, right? Esmond is a saltfish, if they want to call it that, so they're trying hard. So for the time being, Mr. Naked had to see what it is that he could do in that seat, absent making any claims against Esmond Ford. But if Esmond Ford is not the chosen candidate in 2025, and somebody else is selected whose background may not be as clean as Munford. I am making any allegations. I don't know. It could be Munford, it could be anybody else. But I am saying that Munford, so they had to see how they dealing with that. And number 5, Sangre Grande, which is Roger Monroe. So for the most part, Roger Monroe, save and except for that issue with respect to and I imagine that they're going to find a way to bring that back up. You recall that this was another story covered by Mark Bassant, if memory serves me correctly, in the lead up to the 2020 election with respect to some power of attorney that Mr. Monroe had for his grandfather's assets. And that while the grandfather was alive but was ailing, I think from cancer or whatever it is, Mr. Monroe was the one who was doing all of the grandfather's business. And subsequent to the grandfather's death, there was a claim that Mr. Monroe would have gone to the bank, use this power of attorney to treat with debts that pertain to the grandfather's illness, as well as to treat with issues of the funeral. And they said the claim was that he had gone to one branch of RBC and he didn't get through, and he went to another one and he got through. Otherwise, from that, I don't know Mr. Monroe, that name ever get called up in anything. But again, that was another Mark Bassant expose. So it will be left to be seen, right? If they're going to bring that back up again to go after Roger Monroe. But I am saying, you see those 5 marginal seats? Those are the 5 that they think could win them, notwithstanding what's happening in Tobago, as I'm coming to just now. But those are the 5 seats that they targeted. Understand? So if it is that we continue to allow ourselves to be taken up with the whole Black excellence argument, I'm not saying, maybe, but I am not convinced that is the motive. I am seeing it for what it is. There are 5 seats, marginal seats that they're targeting, that they believe they could get their hands on in 2025, and they need to go after the people. Foster Cummings is doing a lot of work in La Joqueta Talparo. A lot of work. And if it is that you are successful in tarnishing his name to the point where he is not selected as the candidate in 2025, and Jolene John believes that she has an easy chance to get in there, because obviously persons who would have benefited from all of the work that Foster Cummings has been doing in that constituency and who have some level of allegiance to Mr. Cummings, we are likely to see a repeat in 2025 of what happened in 2010, where in Arima, where the people were saying, we want Penny, and Mr. Manning say, I don't want Penny, I'm going to put Laurel. And people say, well, if you feel you're in charge, we will show you. You put Laurel there, and we will not vote for the PNM. And we saw what happened in Arima. The People's Partnership took Arima because the PNM people held fast to their word. So if it is that you are successful in tarnishing Foster Cummings' name to the point where he is not selected as a candidate in 2025, and where it is that he would have won that seat, I think, by just over 2,000 votes, which is a very small margin, that if you could get at least 2,500 persons loyal to Foster Cummings to say, well, if all you put Foster, we are voting for the PNM, then Jolene could simply ease in there. And we know that at least 18 of the 19 seats that the UNC have, they could count on at least 18. So they just need 3 more. 3. Whether or not they could hold on to Muruga Tibalan is another story, because Michelle Benjamin isn't exactly very popular down there these days. But they just need 3. So in case they lose that, let's see what we could do with. We have 5 that we could work on. 5 that we could work on to ensure that if all we need is 3 and be inside, 21. Yeah? Right now, the 2 in Tobago, the PNM really can hug up. You know what's going on there. So that is at least 2 they should be concerned about. And those 5, 7. So with 22 in the bag, minus 7, 15. And I am certain that those 2 in Tobago, they may very well be inclined, should they win, to form an amalgamation with the UNC, whether it's Farley, TPP, or Watson, PDP, whoever it is. Right? Once they could promise Farley, look, when we sit down and we will allow you and the THA to only draft whatever all you want, whatever autonomy bill all you want, draft it, put whatever it is all you want inside there, and just bring it to us, and we will pass it for it. Because to be honest, the UNC really couldn't care less about Tobago. As a matter of fact, if all you want secession, we give all of that too. Anything to join with you all to get them 2 seats. And I'm sure Farley will be more than happy. Farley and Trevor James. And I'm not putting it past the UNC to do that. Tell Valley and the THA, draft all your own autonomy bill. Bring it for us, and we will pass it. Because as Kamala says, the reason why the UNC don't put up any candidates in Tobago is because she's of the view that Tobago ought not to be run or dictated to by any party that is rooted in Trinidad. So they have, other than Stinkmouth, what's his name? Skippy, who cussed out the tourists the other day and tell them what part of their mother's anatomy to hull. They really have no interest in Tobago whatsoever. As far as they're concerned, those two seats are unnecessary hindrances, they're unnecessary nuisances that the PNM could benefit from to win government. And as best as possible, they could ensure that those two seats are enshrined always in Tobago's hands. It's better for the UNC in Trinidad. It's just a street fight in Trinidad between them and the PNM. Right? So we need to be wary of that Tobago situation that I'm coming to shortly. Yeah. So I'm just saying, look at it from that perspective. With all the other things that I've heard about things, and and they don't want to see a black man succeed and all this kind of thing, turn on to do that. It's just about a political play. And if we focus on that perspective of it, then we would totally lose sight of what the UNC really is doing. Setting the play. They're not waiting until 2025 to start the thing. They're starting to do it now. Undermine Foster Cummins and the work that he's doing there, right? And the only way you could do that is if it is that you could mount a successful case against him, such that, because the PNM's position is if you have a case to answer, they're not going to select you as a candidate. As good as you are, as good an MP as you are, they will not select you. Again, I remind you, look how easy, and what was his name? Ansel Antoine. He was selected as the candidate for 2020. He was inside, went through the screening committee, you get the nod. You go on a platform and say some piece of stupidness, and your throat bust. Within a day or two, you were no longer the candidate. Ayo Pancho, bye-bye. So if it is that they could mount a significant case against Foster, who is doing all of this work, and Foster has his support in La Joqueta Talparo, we need to get rid of he and let them put somebody else and get all them people vexed. And then when they go and say, well, no Foster, no vote. No Foster, no vote. No vote. That's why Jolene working the seat now, Yes. They walk about in La Joqueta Talparo. She going back there. She realized last time that the stove and the fridge and the furniture set didn't work. The bribes didn't work. We need to get the people riled up against the PNM. And we had to get rid of Foster so they could put somebody inside there who has not been present in the constituency, who they don't know, they have no allegiances to, and get them no Foster, no vote. And that's one in back. So we have 18, that's 19, we need 2 more. That's why Daniel Roberts walking St. Joseph every Saturday now, and not walking Tunapuna. Because, as I said, he had nothing on Esmond. So he had to work that seat. Work it hard and hope that you could go in there and spread lies and talk about how the PNM don't like black people and the PNM this and the PNM that, and rile up enough people who voted for the PNM in 2020 in that seat to get them to turn away from the PNM, either to not vote or to vote for the UNC. That's the strategy for now, unless they could find something. And what I see, as I said, Esmond is a sweet bread. So they won't have a hard time. All right? Now, if Esmond is not the candidate, well then, it's a walk in the park for them. And well, of course, St. Joseph. They work in that St. Joseph seat. They pelt one big stone against Terrence so far, and he has been able to deflect. Let's see what else they're going to try and come with to get rid of Terrence. Right? Because he went in 2013 in the by-election, and then he came and he won again in 2015, and he won again in 2020. So clearly, he has some popularity there. Okay? He's doing some work there. So we need to get rid of he. And Paris and San Fernando, West. Right. And Roger Monroe. But, all they need is 3. So if they get through and Grandy right now, local government election will tell what their fortunes are likely to be in Sangre Grande. If it is that they are able to retain control of that corporation and arrest any more districts in that corporation, and it becomes more firmly UNC, well then the PNM know they're in trouble in Grande come 2025. And I don't know if it is that there's sufficient time to turn the tide in that seat. But we will see. We'll see. There's only so much I can say on that, But anyway, I am not a part of management. So management have to know whatever strategy they have in place, and if it could work up there, deal with that. I hope Roger Monroe won that seat again because of his reputation in Grandy as a man, a worker, and prior to becoming MP, based on whatever role he used to play in the community and so on, people loved him and he was successful. Whether or not he could duplicate that in 2025, assuming that he is the candidate, we'll see how that goes. Right. But we will speak more on that at another time, right? Because I wanted to deal with that from the perspective that Mr. Basant, having published something or a story on that 8 months ago, saw it fit to come back and double down on that same story 8 months later, right? To give us an update. He was able to quote the police, and the police say, oh, yes, there's an ongoing investigation and whatnot. Okay? But in 2020, 3 years ago, you did a story on Barry Paderath, in-depth story on Barry and money that Barry gave to Kamla. You did an in-depth story on Barry in 2011, forming a company, he and Imami, start a company, got millions of dollars in contracts, right? You broke that story, and there has been no follow-up. Almost 3 years later, no follow-up on that story, right? We didn't see no bank statement from Barry bank account, but you could show us credit union statement from Foster account. We didn't see no set of copies. All we see was prints of 2 checks that you asked Barry about. But all the other checks, we didn't get no copies of that. We haven't been treated to copies of contracts or specifics or particulars, granular details of all the contracts that Barry and Imami get from 2011 to 2015, amounting to millions of dollars. In some cases, you told us that in some of the cases, these contracts, the bid that Barry and Imami put out was much higher than other persons who would have bid. Persons with years of experience lost out to Barry and Imami. We didn't get no particulars, no granular details about those contracts, who the contracts, what the contract was for. Nothing of the sort, right? You do a 5-minute or a 10-minute story where you bounce up Barry walking in Princestown campaigning, and you ask him about it, and he give you some cock and bull story, tell you, well, he can't remember why he gave Kamla the money. And 2 of the checks, he tell you, well, if you look at the dates, you will see it was my birthday. 2 separate dates, but he tell you it was his birthday, and that's why Imami gave him that money. And apparently he's the Queen of England, that his birthday is celebrated on 2 separate days, right? And you buy that. Up to now, 3 years later, we don't know if there's an ongoing police investigation to that matter. You ain't call the police to ask them if they're investigating that, to follow up on the story that you broke. You're not interested in that, right? So we want to know. But you're not interested in doing a follow-up of that. Almost 3 years later, but 8 months, within the space of 8 months, you were able to gather enough information to come back and give us a comprehensive follow-up on Foster. Right? Prison Gate, 2009, 2 attorneys, prominent UNC attorneys, Debedine and Ramdeen. Yeah? No follow-up on that. No follow-up on that. So we don't know what is the status of that investigation. You have so many back investigations taking place. You weren't interested in calling the police, the same police you called to find out what's going on with Foster, to ask them what is the status of these investigations. You're interested in that, but you're interested in Foster. 8 months, you were able to compile all of this information, such detailed information, copies of checks, copies of deposit slips, bank statement, you name it. For 3 years, you can't get no additional information on Barry and Imami, and nothing to corroborate Barry's story, or rather Kamla's claim as to what the money, the $135,000 was for. No follow-up to tell us, well, yes, we did our investigation, and what Kamla said was true. Nothing of the sort, or what she said was a lie. 3 years later, you can't get that information yet, but in 8 months, you were able to get this whole dossier of information against Foster Gomez. We see you, Mark. We see you, and we know where you're getting your information from. All right? A lot of this information, some of which might have been gleaned from the filing of Freedom of Information request, we know you didn't file that. So people just think that's landing in your mailbox. Hey, I have a story. Hey, look, something new every evening whenever you open the mailbox. Hey, look at there, boy. Something new, boy. A copy of this, a copy of that. Yeah? And it's just the journalistic fairies putting that in your mailbox. And you ain't concerned where it comes from. Yeah? But apparently the fairy is not interested in giving you any information on Barry and Imami, Ramdeen and Debedine. on Ramdean with respect to Nelson Gate. You know, you have no sources in Scotiabank who could print out a copy of Ramdean bank statement to send to you to show you where everything, all the deposits that Nelson say he put in the account is there. You have no contacts in FC in Scotia. But I bet if Foster have an account in Scotia, you could get that information, but you can't get Ramdean information. And all right, but as I said, we will deal with that on another day. I want to touch on Farley and Trevor in Tobago. I saw three interviews in fact, that Farley and Trevor did last week on different media houses, press conferences and interviews that they did on morning programs, right? And if you, for those of you who would have seen those press conferences and morning shows, Farley Augustine and Trevor James seem hell-bent on promoting division between Trinidad and Tobago by promoting lies, misinformation, disinformation, misrepresenting the truth in terms of the relationship between the central government and the THA, deliberately so, and only causing a set of bacchanal and stirring up feelings of acrimony in the minds and hearts of Tobagonians towards Trinidadians, right? And I find that to be extremely dangerous, especially Farley Augustine, who should know better, and beating his chest that he is the champion of integrity, right? In this interview that he did last week on Tobago Updates, beating his chest that all it took was a one-liner to hit Keith Rowley and knockout punch. And it was up to him to put the Prime Minister in his place. And the Prime Minister need to know his place and all of that. In fact, the title of the interview was, "Don't Mind Tobago Business." But in listening to that 38-minute interview, it is clear that Farley doesn't seem to know what his business is, or he is more minded to focus on Keith Rowley business than to deal with his own business. And the minister, he and Trevor, now I see it for what it is, right? I call it a spade a spade. You see where Trevor James is concerned? It is evident that all of a sudden now, Trevor is Mr. Tobago, and everything he's about the best interests of Tobago, and that the government, central government players need to dress back and put in place and allow Tobago to function in the way that the law provides. And that the THA, under the leadership of Farley Augustine, and of which he is a part, will not stand for it. And they will not tolerate the disrespect from central government. Everything now that before would have been deemed or considered to be inefficiencies on the part of the public service, as far as Trevor and Farley concerned, is now central government trying to punish Tobago because of a change of administration. Or as Trevor say, the central government suffering from withdrawal syndrome. They still can't accept the fact that the PNM is no longer in charge of Tobago. And so they're doing whatever they can to frustrate the THA. So in the hope that they could get back into office at the next THA election during, I think, 2025. And everything now, every little thing, any issue or hindrance that they encounter with respect to the treatment, not necessarily with central government, but various ministries in Trinidad, everything is the minister and the ministry and the central government trying to frustrate Tobagonians. I want to play some of that for you all today, right? I will start with Trevor. Let me see if I get this here. I'm not gonna, Trevor's one is a little shorter, so I could play that one first for some of you who might have missed it. So last week, yes, Trevor James had a press conference in which he's claiming that his division, which is responsible for the Studley Park Enterprises Limited, which is the entity that deals with mining and so on, and quarrying in Tobago, that they apply for a license to mine because the last license expired, and they apply for a license or certificate, as the case may be, to blast. Since October last year, up to now, they can't get it yet. And he's blaming, again, the minister and the Ministry of Energy, that they're deliberately trying to frustrate, or as he said, to subjugate the THA and the people of Tobago by taking so long to give them this license. Because as far as he's concerned, as license expire, by the next day or 2 days before the license expire, we should have the renewed license in hand. No questions asked. Nothing, just renew it. But yet still you're talking about you want to maintain a relationship with the central government. But you all are the antagonists. You, Trevor James, and Farley. The two main culprits. The rest of them, they quiet, they low-key. and they're allowing Trevor James. But Trevor is doing, from where I sit, I see what Trevor James is doing is to deflect from the criticism and the licks that he gets in for all the contracts that he's been giving to Trinidadian contractors south of the Caroni Bridge, right? At the expense of Tobagonian contractors who, while under the PNM, while the PNM was there, were getting the contracts and doing the work. But you are Mr. Tobago, right? You are the quintessential Tobagonian. But your division giving out the most amount of contracts to Trinidadian contractors to the point where they're disrespectful to tell a member of the media if all your what was the word by Negro journalist or something to that effect, or they don't understand English, right? And he said he didn't say Negro, he said Newsday. If all your Newsday journalists, so you know, right? And you accept that level of disrespect, and you continue to give contracts to such persons, right? And you know the licks that you're getting for things that his administration has been doing, that his division has been doing, that is to the chagrin of Tobagonians. And so to try and deflect from that, let me now play Big Tan too. And I am Mr. Tobago. And I want to come and show Tobagonians, well, don't study that now. But just look at what Rowley doing we. And what were the ministers of the central government doing we. And they're trying to squeeze Tobagonians and they want to put their knee on Tobagonians' neck. Let me play Trevor first, right? Listen to this. All right, not yet. I ain't ready for you yet, Valley. Let me play Trevor first. Let me get this here. Let's make sure this thing is connected. Bluetooth. Right. Oh, yes, I forgot to load down the volume. All right, let me get it back up there. Give me 1 second.
And all the liabilities and obligations that immediately before the coming into force of this act, the former assembly was entitled or subject to are hereby transferred to and conferred or imposed upon the assembly. What this says is that the rights to the lands at spell, which were previously vested in the state before 1980 and 1996, have been vested in the THA, and therefore the mineral rights, the ground at spell and all throughout Tobago are now vested in the THA. And we see this linking of auditing at spell in order to, as a pre-requirement and a precursor to the issuing of a license to mine, as another attempt by the government in Trinidad to overreach, to take every action that they can take to not only subjugate the assembly, but to prevent us from benefiting from what is ours. We must remember in Tobago that they have contrived for years to define Tobago and the benefits of whatever we have in the seabed in Tobago to 6 nautical miles, so that everything outside of that is controlled from Trinidad. This is an attempt now, similar to what was being proposed in the autonomy bills, to move that control to the land in Tobago, where they can come to the land and take whatever they want for their benefit. The law says that all taxes generated in Tobago must be paid in Tobago to the Tobago House of Assembly. The rights to the lands that were transferred to the state, that were once in the state, were transferred to the people of Tobago. And I've attempted to call the Minister of Energy before, and I'm asking the Minister of Energy again today to take the necessary action that allows for the granting of the mining and production license to spell and the blasting permit to spell. It is the right of the people of Tobago, and I want to ask that I can reach out again to him to discuss this matter, but the laws are clear to us that this seems to be an attempt to slow down any production in Tobago, and this assembly simply will not stand for it. I want to thank you and thank all those who are listening and enjoying the people of Tobago to what we see as a willful attempt to create conflict between the government of Trinidad and Tobago and the government of Tobago? Thank you.
I wasn't aware that there was a government of Tobago, but all right, Trevor, I just stopped there for a moment. You hear what he said? He wants to enjoin the citizens of Tobago, right? That this is a willful attempt to cause confusion between central government and the government of Tobago. There's Trevor James, the Secretary for Infrastructure and Quarries and so on, making the statement. In all my years, I have never seen, heard, or read about this level of acrimony between Tobagonians and Trinidadians, as I have seen, heard, and read about since the PDP came into office. And prior to that, in the couple of years leading up to the last THA election, where it started with Watson talking about secession and how all them people, you see all them people with the big red flag in the yard, no justice for you, no justice for you, all of that, right? So it is not bad enough that you're causing acrimony between supporters of the different political parties, the PNM and the PDP then, now TPP or whoever the supporters, I don't know how many supporters the TPP pull, but it started there. And they have now doubled down. So while Watson dressed back, Watson in Trinidad, because Watson decided now he wants Tobago too small for him. So whereas before, his focus was on THA, he bigger than that now. He wants to be the mayor of Port of Spain and he wants to be the prime minister. Like, it depends on his mood, wherever he can't decide what it is that he wants, but whichever one he get, he go take. Right? So while Watson has now eased off on that, on trying to promote that conflict between Trinidad and Tobago, Farley pick up with it full speed. He and Trevor. Yeah? I ain't play Farley yet, just now. Some of the disrespectful thing, listen, you go hear Farley calling people house slave and what? You hear just now. Let me continue. Now, you heard what Trevor said, he wants to enjoin the citizens of Tobago that this is a willful act to promote confusion between the central government and the THA government of Tobago.
Thank you very much.
Listen to the question.
James, for your presentation. Members of the media, at this time, we're open for questions. Remember, you can raise your virtual hand and proceed to ask your question once you're allowed. All right, I see Clayton Clark with his hands raised. So we'll go with Clayton Clark first and then Liz Williams right after. Go ahead, Clayton.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm hoping you are hearing me.
Yes, we're hearing you.
Secretary James and all other who might be present. My question to Mr. James, you have written to the central government on several issues, the licensing and the other matters. Are you happy with the responses? Have you been getting response? Are you happy with the dialogue that you're getting with central government and several of the issues that you have written to them on?
Well, after my last letter, the Ministry of Works did respond, and a virtual meeting is scheduled for tomorrow at 11 o'clock. And we hope that meeting will be fruitful, and we look forward to a better and improved relationship with the government in Trinidad. And we have no issues. We represent the people of Tobago, and we do it as skillfully and as strategically and as manfully as we can. We have certain responsibilities under the law, and we intend to take all those responsibilities on behalf of the people of Tobago.
All right, Liz Williams, you can go ahead.
Hi.
Listen to his response to Liz Williams' question. Bearing in mind, he just said he wants to enjoin the people of Tobago, right, to the view that this is willful attempt to frustrate or to cause bacchanal between central government and the government of Tobago.
Mr. James, hope you guys can hear me. And hi, Patricia. What I wanted to know from Mr. James is this continuing issue with respect to central government that you spoke of. Is it that you are saying this continues to be a deliberate act to undermine the autonomy of Tobago under Act 40 of 1996? Also, Mr. James, I don't know if you can look into a situation at licensing in Tobago where the printer is down and some people are complaining that they are not being able to get their driver's permit. I don't know if you can look into the matter.
In terms of the first question, Liz, we are not at the point where we can conclude that these actions are willfully intended to create whatever response the central government wants to have.
Didn't this man just say he wants to enjoin the people of Tobago? That this is a willful act on the part of the central government to cause bacchanal confusion between central government and the government of Tobago. Now he is telling you, just a few moments later, he's telling this. Well, they don't have evidence to support that that this is willful. Pick a struggle, Trevor. Yeah? Your memory short? It's so short that you can't remember what you just said 2 minutes ago, Trevor. You just said it willful, but no, we don't have evidence, to support the view that this is a willful attempt on the part of central government. This man is a secretary, and this man is spreading this type of information. The same interview, in a matter of about 2 to 3 minutes, totally contradicted himself. I continue.
Conclude, however, is that there have been several instances where the government is overreaching, where the government is taking actions, in our opinion, that seems to be intended to cause conflict between the peoples of Trinidad and Tobago. And we are concerned. We have taken the stance that whenever these kinds of issues raise their head, that we would write and respond and seek to do what the Act says, which is find solutions through meetings between the Chief Secretary and the Prime Minister, and meetings between the secretaries and the minister in Trinidad, and we will continue to do that until we arrive at another conclusion. In terms of licensing, we visited licensing earlier this week, the administrator and myself, and we've identified some issues there which we are trying to resolve. This new issue regarding the printing has to be verified, but if it is in fact an issue, we will look at it, and the administrator will make the necessary actions in order to resolve that in the shortest possible time, so we can serve the public as best as we can. Licensing in Tobago, again, is probably the best performing licensing division in all of Trinidad and Tobago. We want that to continue.
The other day when licensing was doing their work, right? When they were doing their work, cracking down on errant motorists, persons who driving without license, driving without insurance, and other various infractions of the Motor Vehicles Act. They had a problem, right? They bring up a whole other license officer from Trinidad to terrorize Tobago, and he wants to tell you that the licensing department in Tobago is the best functioning in all of Trinidad and Tobago. But a simple thing, like fixing a printer to give people the license, you know. Well, that is something new. You don't know about that. People complaining in Tobago they can't get a license because the printer don't. But you want power, right? Because the 5th schedule said that licensing is under us and we have that authority. But you can't even fix something as simple as a printer. But you want to dictate how licensing should operate in Tobago and tell Rowley, mind the damn business. Yeah? So, and here he said, if that is so, it has to be verified. The administrator will deal with that, not me. Not me as the secretary. I know my work. It's not for me to intervene and make sure that problem is fixed. The administrator will deal with it. That's how he running that division. But he made a claim, right, that in the Folsom interview, that since October last year, they sent a request to the Ministry of Energy to get this blasting license and the blasting permit and the mineral, the whatever it is, the certificate or the license, as the mining license, and up to now they can't get it yet. And the Minister of Energy, Stuart Young, has responded. Let me read that for you quick, because I want to get to Farley and I have to take calls. So let me get Farley the statement from the minister. Where is it? because Trevor James has been the Secretary for Infrastructure. Spell has been under him for more than a year, and he apparently doesn't know the procedure to apply for a blasting license. He doesn't know that it is not the ministry that gives the blasting license, but the Commissioner of Police. He know that. But you come in a press conference to blame the minister and the ministry for delaying the license, the blasting permit, to say that they're deliberately trying to frustrate Tobagonians. Let me get this here, right? It is under the other page, all right. Hold on one sec. Right. Let me get it here. Right. Claims related to Studley Park Enterprise Limited blasting permit and mineral license, and this is from the Ministry of Energy, Stuart and Minister. Minister of Energy and Energy Industries and Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister, the Honorable Stuart Young, has observed with concern the recent statements made by THA Assemblyman Trevor James, Secretary for the Division of Infrastructure, Quarry and Urban Development, with respect to the outstanding mining license and blasting permit for the Studley Park Quarry operations in Tobago, and advises as follows. It is a legal requirement of the laws of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago that every quarry must obtain a mining license before it can legally operate. See Minerals Act Chapter 6103. This law applies to every single quarry operation, whether it is carried out in Tobago or in Trinidad. The administration of this act is carried out by the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries with the mandate of protecting the interests of the people of T&T with respect to the extraction of minerals. There is a process in law where any entity wishing to conduct any quarry operations must apply for a mining license, and this application, which is statutorily determined, is administered by the Minerals Division at the Ministry. Upon Minister Young's inquiry into what he has discovered are the baseless allegations of Assemblyman Trevor James that there was some attempt